Mike Radich here, and I'm now joined on the phone by MMA veteran David Mitchell. David, how are you?
I'm great, man. Thank you.
David, you got a fight coming up February 15th at WFC 8. How's training been going for the fight?
Awesome. Just been double, triple days every day, 6 days a week, Try to take Sundays off, and been working really good with Dwayne Ludwig and Team Alpha Male, and it's been going real good. Getting a lot of wrestling in and a lot of stand-up.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been training with Team Alpha Male?
I think this is like my third month now. I've been in there like December, January, now going into February. It's a young relationship, but it's been really successful so far.
Mm-hmm. For a long time, you were training out of NorCal Fighting Alliance. Just curious, why did you decide to make the change over to Alpha Male? Is it just the staple of guys they got over there? They have a lot of great talent over there. The coaches are great. Is it that, or was it kind of based on your UFC run didn't go the way you had planned? Are you just trying to get a new spark, a different change? Is it more that, or is it what they're doing over at Team Alpha Male?
They're definitely doing big things. I would say more than anything else, it's to work with Dwayne Ludwig.
Mm-hmm.
I've been a fan of his since before I was fighting, and his striking is really on another level. So I really wanted to work with him, and the opportunity to do that was just a short distance away and very inexpensive and reasonable to live out here in Sacramento. And there's a lot of healthy, good things to do, and it's very simple life. Just.
Mm-hmm.
With the gym and walk home. I just moved around the corner, so kind of a fresh start, and also just the wrestling of the quality of wrestlers out here with Lance Palmer,
mm-hmm.
Chad Mendez, Uriah Faber, a lot of good guys, and just the gym's just got a real positive attitude, and everyone's just getting after it. My jiu-jitsu, I never lost on jiu-jitsu really,
right. Mm-hmm.
So after 10 years with Dave Terrell and NorCal Fighting Alliance, I felt like it was time to get a new look and work on those holes in my game.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Now, in the past, you expressed an interest in fighting at lightweight, 155 pounds, but this fight that you have coming up on February 15th, you're going the wrong way. You're fighting at middleweight. Just curious, why are you fighting at 185?
Basically, Fernando said he'd fight me at either weight, and there was another fight scheduled between Max Griffin and Scott Smith at 185, and I kind of had a feeling something would happen with that fight, and it wouldn't end up happening, so I wanted to be ready and at the right weight to accept whoever fell out of that fight, not because Fernando isn't a worthy opponent, but just those names were bigger, and there was, a possible title on the line, so it just seemed like, there was a good bracket going, kind of a tournament almost at 185 pounds. And no one was really fighting at 170, even though, I think all three of us, me, Max, and Fernando, could make that weight. It just seemed like, what's the point? These smaller shows, you're not getting paid a lot of money. It's like, why cut a bunch of weight and put yourself through a bunch of crap when, you both know you're 170s, but just fight at 85 for this fight, it just made sense.
Mm-hmm. But you still had plans of going to lightweight. It's just that the circumstance, or maybe 170. Are you planning? What's the plan here? 170, 155. What are you thinking?
Well, the plan is to beat up Fernando next Saturday, February 15th.
Absolutely.
Sacramento, California, at McClellan Convention Center at the Air Force Base. So, just for anybody out there that might want to check that out, it's a loaded card and bunch of guys are fighting and a bunch of girls, really great girls. And if you go online to West Coast Fighting, you can get a ticket. You get 5% off if you just put in the coupon code David, just my first name. So real simple. I hope everyone gets in there and gets a ticket, and or buy them from one of the fighters, because that's how we get paid. Mm-hmm. And after that, provided God willing, I can overcome a very worthy opponent in Fernando Gonzalez next Saturday. And I'll be looking to get that title at West Coast Fighting Championship at the next event, whether that's a 70 title or an 85 title or both. I got my eyes on Max Griffin, whatever way he wants to fight at.
Mm-hmm. How disappointed are you? Well, it's kind of a weird situation because you were right. The Scott Smith and Max Griffin fight, you had that gut feeling that it wasn't going to happen, and it's not going to happen because Scott Smith got injured again. And Max Griffin just fought Joaquin Spirit Wolf, so I don't think he was interested in taking someone on short notice because he just had fought. How disappointed are you that Max Griffin fell through and you're not going to get that fight right now?
Well, he was planning on fighting Scott Smith, and right. I don't think he really got hurt. I don't think he wants to fight David Mitchell on short notice, and right. I can understand that. I'm very disappointed. I was hoping that it was a go. I was, under the impression that was my fight if something happened, and even Max personally told me that he thought it was going to be me and him, and then push came to shove. I just put the shout out on Facebook like, let's get down, and Scott isn't going to make it, so let's get down, and apparently, it isn't going to happen. So I kind of feel like a fool to even say anything. Mm-hmm. If I had any inclination that there was a chance that fight wasn't going to happen, I would have never blasted it out on Facebook or in the social media or anything like right. that. Mm-hmm. It's just nothing but, no disrespect to Fernando Gonzalez. If you watch the last fight between him and Max Griffin, you can hear the announcers and you can watch for yourself. I feel like Fernando clearly won that fight 4-1 and almost tapped out Max a few times. And, it's one of those, like, fighting a Thai guy in Thailand. You're not going to pick up the decision against Max Griffin in West Coast Fighting. And
right. Mm-hmm.
What would I expect to? I would expect to finish the guy, and, Fernando didn't get that done. So here we are, and Fernando will get down, and, the winner deserves a title fight.
Mm-hmm. Is there something brewing between you and Max Griffin? Because at the press conference for this event, that was a fight that one of the media members, I don't know who it was, but they threw out the possibility of you two guys fighting. Is there something, is there like bad blood between the two of you guys? Is there anything there?
He strikes me as a nice guy and everything like that, a bit, a cavalier, like wearing his West Coast fighting belts, UFC and stuff mm-hmm. like that. But, that's exactly what a promotion like West Coast needs. They need a publicity guy, and so I got nothing but respect for Max Griffin. We were at that media day, and he came up to me after Brandon said that maybe Scott wasn't going to be able to fight, and Brandon told me, well, you might have options, and then Max came up to me and said, looks like it might be me and you, like he was down to fight me, and then when push came to shove, he didn't want none, which I can understand, that's probably a smart decision for him. He's got a lot of juice going right now, and mm-hmm. and I wouldn't take that fight either. But come April, after I dispense of Fernando, then he ain't gonna have nowhere to run, and he's gonna have to fight me. And yeah, I guess you could say there's a little bit of bad blood, mm-hmm. Just based on that. And yeah, I'm pissed off, man. I want to beat Max Griffin's ass.
I found it very strange that your opponent, Fernando Gonzalez, and his opponent, Scott Smith, both those guys weren't at the press conference, so I thought that maybe there was, going to be a surprise that they were going to announce that you were going to fight Max Griffin for the interim belt, because he has the interim belt right now for West Coast in the middleweight division, and then the winner of that was going to fight Scott Smith, so I was kind of hoping that maybe there was going to be a special announcement, but it never happened. Anyways, your opponent for February 15th, Fernando Gonzalez, it sounds like you know a lot about him because you've seen some of his past fights, especially the Max Griffin fight, which you mentioned. But overall, what are your thoughts about him as an opponent?
I watch that fight virtually every night, 25 minutes between two, as far as I'm concerned, the two next guys are going to fight, so it makes sense to watch that fight. And, the guy is dangerous. He's got power. He's got submissions. He fights at a world-class camp at Team Quest down in Temecula with, really good coaches. He's got good wrestling. The dude is a well-rounded, veteran who got robbed in a couple of his losses, and he's got 31 fights, so the dude is no joke. However, I think when the fight hits the mat, he's going to be outmatched.
Mm-hmm. Is it pretty simple what the game plans are for both of you guys? Is it as easy as that you're going to try to get him to the ground and choke him out, and he's going to try to keep the fight standing and knock you out? Is it simple like that, or do you think the matchup is more complex?
I think it's got all kinds of layers, because that guy is dangerous with his guillotine, and I got a ton of reach on him, so there might be motivation for me to try to keep him out on the end of my punch, and there might be motivation for him to try to, get on top and, get position, ground and pound, and maybe try to grab that guillotine when I'm coming in for a takedown. I think there's, I don't think it's a straight grappler versus striker matchup
right.
from 1993. I think it's a dynamic, UFC level mixed martial arts fight, and, I would recommend to come check it out. I wish it was a 5-rounder, but I don't think it'll go 15 minutes anyway.
Mm-hmm. Of the guys that you've fought in the past, whose style does he remind you of the most?
I guess Mike Pierce, the one guy who caught me. I mean, right. Shorter wrestler, kind of, likes to, pin guys up against the cage and, get a couple submissions and got some knockout power, I mean, just style-wise and physical stature-wise, he reminds me of Mike Pierce.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How many fights do you have with West Coast? Do you have a multiple fight deal with them?
Brennan Weir's really cool. He's basically just trying to get guys to move up to the next level, and I'm just really excited to hopefully fight in more than one, just continue to fight for him. Right now we have this, we have the fight in front of us, and that's what we got. And if I haven't signed for longer than that, so if Max Griffin was to try to duck me and go to another promotion, I would follow him there, or I would, find another spot, or trying to get big fights. But I'm also trying to get paid and make a living at this, and so I got to go where the money is.
Mm-hmm. The reason I asked was because a lot of people thought when you were released from the UFC that you would go back to Tachi Palace, because at one point in time you were their welterweight champion. Was there any talks with them? I mean, during the time you were in the UFC, they were at an off time because they ceased operations for a little while, but when you were a free man, did they have any interaction with you? Did they talk to your manager or you about possibly working out a deal?
I'm completely self-managed at this point in the game. I did talk to Richard down there at Tachi Palace, and I'm also pretty good friends with Bobby Martinez and some of the other characters in that show. But the only word I got was that this show coming up was fully booked out, and on that I haven't heard anything from them, and I didn't even really get, like, they didn't say, hey, we'll give you a room and a ticket if you come down on Thursday. So I'm not like boycotting Tachi, but unless they come to their senses and call me up, and screw them.
Oh, I see. Dave, I just want to touch a little bit on your UFC run. You were 1-4 under the UFC banner, and David, I think I'll always remember your UFC run as the first of blank, because it was the first time that you fought outside of California. It was the first time that you fought outside the United States. It was the first time that you lost a fight. It was the first time that you were finished in a fight. It was the first time you flew to China for a fight and then the fight didn't take place. It was the first time that you didn't have a fight in a year. There were a lot of firsts in the run that you had with the UFC. I'll remember it as the first of many for you, but how will you remember your UFC run?
First of all, I got to apologize. I don't mean to throw Tachi Palace under the belt. They were really good to me, paid me well.
Yeah.
I should have never left there. I was supposed to get like $15,000 to fight Phil Collins, and I turned it down to go to Texas and fight a guy in his hometown that was a total savage. That was like the only guy that I really felt that I ever fought that was really better than me. But moving on to UFC, it was a tough run. I was struggling with just a lot of more pressure than I never wrestled collegiately, and I never competed in any kind of sport or anything that helped me prepare for that. Tachi Palace was just like a little inside gig, and the other shows were like Gladiator Challenge and like right home at Santa Rosa. So stepping from that into like fighting in like where the Longhorns basketball team fought in this huge arena out of town and crazy different state, and there was nothing that I'd done in my life to prepare me. The silver lining of that now is that I did just about anything you could imagine. Fighting on the same card twice with Anderson Silva, fighting in the biggest shows and UFC pay-per-views, and fighting in Brazil twice, and Texas and Chicago, and there's really like flying to China to fight over there. There's really nothing else you can throw at me at this point. Except for maybe fighting for a title. Outside of that, like, I've done it all. So, I think second go around, which I believe there will be, I'll be ready. At
the West Coast Fighting press conference, you mentioned that when you were coming up in this sport and you were trying to make it into the UFC, that was your goal, and that was your only goal. Your only goal was to make it to the UFC. You didn't think past making it to the UFC, and that was kind of the reason why you fell on hard times, is because once you made it there was nothing else you were shooting for. Just curious, when you were going through these losses, and you were an undefeated fighter, when you were going through these losses, what exactly do you think it was that caused some of these losses? Because the guys that you fought in the UFC, Mike Pierce, TJ Wahlberger, Paul Thiago, they're all really good fighters, but the guys that you were fighting in Tachi Palace before you made it to the UFC, those guys are all really good fighters. War Machine, Bobby Green, Papis Martinez, they're all really good fighters. Is it the UFC bright lights? Is it octagon jitters? Was that a factor in why you lost some of your fights?
No offense to Bobby Green or War Machine, but TJ Wahlberger is a straight sav, like 14 UFC fights or something, a winning record, and
right.
there's no comparison. I don't know, I guess Bobby Green must have got a lot better, because like when I fought him, it felt like I was taking candy from a baby. But it might have been like that. It might have been right. the confidence, I mean, your mental game is the biggest game there is, It's all about mindset and believing that you can do it. And when I fought Bobby Green, I just looked right at his ankles and I said, "Man, I'm going to take one of those. I'm going to break one of those ankles." Mm-hmm. And that was like what I did inside of a minute. I mean, it popped 15 times, and he was tapping with both hands. And somehow the guy healed up real quick and beat Crazy Horse like 3 weeks later. I couldn't believe it, but I mean, I think that the mental mindset, definitely with TJ Wahlberger, just wasn't ready for the pressure. And then, I kind of thought that he was going to be garbage because he was only a purple belt under somebody I'd never heard of. So I thought, oh man, I'm just going to run right through this guy, and maybe overconfident, and then at the same time nervous, and all kinds of different stuff going on. I was also developing I had an impinged nerve in my cervical spine that I finally got after the first two losses in UFC. I got it fixed. It was a nerve that was 80% blocked, so the power to the left side of my body was 80%. Like, there was no tricep, there was no trap, all that. I could hardly hold the phone to my ear without getting fatigued. And I couldn't do any light weights, or I couldn't push guys off me. I just had no strength. So by the time I got to Brazil for that fight, I had cortisone shot in my neck, and I was on prednisone, and I was taking anti-inflammatories and shit every day just to try to get through the fight. And that guy wasn't even that good, but I just didn't have nothing. I was just trying to survive.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Now, the Mike Pierce fight, that was the first time ever that you were finished in a fight. Obviously, it wasn't a good experience, but what do you remember from that one?
Oh man, it was crazy. I remember I was winning the fight. I thought I was winning the fight, and I had a couple opportunities to take to the ground, but I was like, nah, I'm winning here. Why do that? And I was listening to not myself, but to my coaches and my game plan of this idea of trying to stand and bang with this guy, which that didn't work out. He caught me on the end of a punch that I didn't see coming, and I don't really remember the second round of that fight still to this day, or leaving. I kind of remember coming to half an hour later and asking my manager if I had been to Brazil, or if this was my first UFC fight. I had literally lost a couple of years of my life, and then all that kind of came back, and I just missed that half hour. But I went to the hospital, and they checked me out and said I was totally okay, and came home and seen the doc, and he said I was a little slow, so I took a bit of time off. And I think a little bit of time off was actually good for me to think about what I wanted to do and how I wanted proceed with my life, because really it was a game changer to get knocked out like that in a fight that really, TJ Wahlberger, I think that guy was actually as good as me, but I'd like to see that fight again. But as far as Pierce, I think he was pretty overrated and really pretty garbage. And same with Paul Thiago, which both those guys kind of got exposed right after they got me. So that was kind of a bummer. The last dude in Brazil too, when I went back, he was. I was still struggling with some problems, some addictions and some demons, and not really wanting to be where I was at training-wise and stuff like that. I basically trained for that fight in a 24-hour fitness, and I just wasn't really a very happy person, so
right.
And that guy was legit, I think if I had to, fight that guy now, it would have been a lot better fight, but The Mike Pierce fight, man, it was devastating. You know, it was very disappointing, and it just sucks. I don't know what else to say about it.
If you don't mind me asking, what kind of addictions?
Like, food was my main thing. Like, I would just binge eat and not train. And, you know, for fighters, they cut a lot of weight, and then they gain a lot of weight right after weigh-ins. I'm sure you're familiar with this cycle that they go through. And,
right.
You know, I was cutting at that point. You know, I was cutting, I think, 2 days before my Pierce fight. I just couldn't stop eating. I was 24 pounds overweight on Thursday, I think, or on Wednesday, and then weigh-in Friday. So it was like literally lost 24 pounds in less than 48 hours, which is an extremely dangerous and unhealthy thing to do. And I basically repeated that same process down in Brazil under worse conditions because I didn't have any Epsom salt, I didn't have any alcohol, I didn't have, you know what I mean? Didn't have a bathtub, didn't have a proper, you know, nothing. It was just like no distilled water available, so I cut almost as much weight. You know, plane was delayed, didn't eat for days. It was just terrible, you know. So after those two experiences, I was trying to like pull in like a Mike Dolce or something, but I think you know, he's only messing with the high level UFC guys, and so I just kind of you know, I really turned to God, and you know, I've kind of found Jesus and really saved me, and now I still struggle with it. You know, looking at donuts and stuff like that, it's difficult, but I am under pretty good control, and you know, for anybody out there that has food addictions and people don't really take you seriously, like, well, just stop eating it. It's really, it's as bad as being an alcoholic or a cocaine addict. It's not easy.
Now, not making an excuse, but these fights that you were fighting in the UFC were the first times in your career that you had ever fought outside of California. Was that a hard adjustment, you know, getting on a plane, traveling for fights? I mean, some of those fights, you know, you've driven to fights and, you know, they have been, you know, right in your backyard, but, you know, flying to Brazil and flying to China, even though the fight didn't take place, but all these, you know, traveling dates that you had to go out for, was that something that was hard on you?
A huge factor. I mean, traveling, just even getting on a plane for me, period, is not something I really enjoy to fly. I love to travel and see new places and do stuff like that, but the actual act of flying is just such an unnatural thing, especially right before you fight. And for me, it was, I kind of have an inflammation problem, like where when I fly, my ankles swell up and stuff, so I just really struggle with that factor, and then getting there, not having like the food that you know would normally eat and whatever, the place you would normally cut weight. I mean, literally, I cut weight every time in 24-Hour Fitness in Santa Rosa, you know, like right by my house. You know, except for Tachi was 3.5 hour drive away, and I would bring a cooler with all the stuff that I needed, and boom, bam, you know, it was simple. They give me a fat sweet, and they took really good care of me down there. I don't know what's going on now, but you're flying all over the place and fighting for UFC, and you know, it's not anyone's fault but their own. You know, that my own, that I wasn't prepared for that. So now that's part of my motivation, just to sign with West Coast and not try to go to Bellator or wherever. Like, I just want to fight locally. The shows are all right here in Sacramento, and then like do it incrementally, you know. Maybe I take a fight in Central California, and then maybe I take a fight in Southern California, and maybe I take a fight in Nevada, you know, like my way back to UFC and to being, now I'm prepared, you know, now I've done it, so I feel good to go wherever I got to go. But I would, you know, we questioned earlier, flight, things like that, you know, things I've learned.
When you got released from the UFC, it was, you know, after your last fight, that was like October, so it's been 5 months, 4 months, 5 months, whatever it's been, since you last fought and since you fought for the UFC. When you got released and you decided that you were going to continue to fight, what did you point the finger to and say, well, if I'm going to continue to do this and get back on the winning track and eventually make it back to the UFC, what's the major thing that had to change? You know, what did you point the finger to and say, if I'm going to do this, I got to change this, whether it's inside the cage, outside the cage, mentally, physically, anything that you need to change?
Well, getting with other guys that train during the day, you know, if this is going to be my job, you wake up in the morning, I wake up in the morning every day, and I go over to the gym and I train. And there wasn't enough pros in Santa Rosa to really do that. You know, we trained in the evening when people got off work. But out here, you go to the gym in the morning, and people are driving up in their nice Toyota Tacomas and classic car. You can see these guys like TJ Dillashaw and Uriah and Lance Palmer and all these guys that are Danny Castillo. These guys are making a living fighting and doing quite well, and to have that be your support system and guys around you like that, it just makes it a lot easier than being the solo dude, like carrying the flag, So I can go in the morning. I go train in the morning. I trained this morning at 9:15 in the morning with Bang Ludwig and all. Joseph Benavides was teaching the class along with Chad Mendez, and then come back at 1:00 and do some mitts, and then I go do another class at 2:30, and then do some yoga in the afternoon and call it a day. When normally I'd still be in the gym right now grinding it out till 9:30, 10 p.m., which is that's not really ideal for me, at least, and I don't think for humans in general. We should be packing it in, for the night, eating dinner and going to bed, and so I can wake up again tomorrow morning early and train. So there's that factor, but there was also I had to get over the food addiction thing, so I gave up gluten entirely, which is, I couldn't, there's no single other piece of diet advice or lifestyle advice I could give to anybody to help them improve their lives if you're struggling with depression or food addiction or anything like that. Giving up gluten and pretty much grains in general, but wheat specifically, it's just a bunch of garbage these days that, you can't go eat at McDonald's if you're gluten-free. They don't have anything on the menu for you. You walk in, you go, okay, and you turn around and walk out.
Right.
So that's been a huge game changer. I met this lovely lady that's gluten, dairy, and soy-free, and I just followed her example, and she said, try it for 30 days, and if it doesn't change your life, go back, But the depression and the hard times I was going through, it just lifted off me when I got off the gluten. It was like that was really my drug.
Right.
It was the sugar and gluten and crap like that. So I'm pretty much off that. I try not to mess with it, and I got on this more high fat, kind of more paleo approach. Call it the bulletproof. If you ever heard of bulletproof coffee, I drink that every morning for breakfast, and I got some people I look up to like Rob Wolf and Dave Asbury. These guys are my heroes and showing me a different way to live, and you don't need these grains and all this crappy processed food. You don't need none of that. And you can just live on real whole foods. So that's what I'm doing. And those two things, and just changing my mental attitude, and just taking Jesus Christ as my personal Lord and Savior, and just going to church every single Sunday, whether I want to or not. Just go somewhere and give thanks, and just give gratitude for what I have. Gratitude is a huge thing, so I just give thanks every day to have my health and to have my life and to be able to carry on.
Usually you fight at 170, but for this fight you're fighting at middleweight, 185 pounds. What's the weight cut like, and what's your weight right now?
I was 6 pounds over, I think, after training today, and I think I might be up to 10 over now, just trying to keep the weight on almost more than anything. I remind myself to eat, and so I think I'm 9-10 pounds over right now. So it's really, really nice. But in retrospect, in the long run, I got the guy I'm hitting mitts with, my kickboxing buddy, DJ, and he's a 185 pounder, and the guy is just massive,
Right.
Big black dude, 6'3", walks around at 230, and I go, okay, I can't stay in this weight class forever, but it sure is nice to take this fight, in this weight class, and I think I'll be as big as this guy.
Two more things about the UFC, and then we'll move on from that. But you mentioned that you're planning on fighting locally, so I assume that your goal is to make it back to the UFC. You're not really interested in World Series of Fighting or Bellator right now anyway, but the goal is to make it back to the UFC. Would you say that you're more hungry now to get back to the UFC than you were getting in?
Yeah, I think by the time I got to where I was when I fought Poppy Martinez and got to 11-0, I was already really struggling with depression and addiction, and I thought that signing with UFC, that'll get me motivated. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that was my mindset at that time. It was okay, I'll sign this contract. I think originally it was Mike Swick I was supposed to fight.
Yep.
Something like that, and I was like, well, fuck, if I'm fighting Mike Swick, I seen him on the show and stuff. I said, oh, no, that'll motivate me, which, that's just putting the carriage in front of the horse, like this was, me, I didn't really have a fight. I didn't even know if I was going to fight ever again after losing that fight in Brazil. And, I was trying to get this regular job, and when they didn't hire me, I didn't really have nothing to do. And my dad's like, well, I'm going to Mexico tomorrow. I was like, cool. So I just jumped in the van and went to Mexico and just had this amazing trip down to Mexico and swam in the Sea of Cortez with the whale sharks, and just was like, forget about it. Didn't train once, didn't run, just drank margaritas and Coronas and had fresh fish tacos and just chilled out and kayaked around and just had a wonderful time and hang out in San Diego. By the time I got back, I was kind of like, I really feel like doing something. I feel like exercising. And so it was like kind of the opposite kind of thing. Like there was no that expectation. And then I was like, I feel pretty good. I'm doing some yoga today. I'm going to run. And then, I just kept going like that and like that. I got off the gluten, and then, kind of opportunity. I feel like God led me here to Sacramento to do his work, to be out here and work with these guys. And I've already cornered a couple guys, and just like, instead of like being in a state where like I didn't want to be anywhere near MMA or anyone that knew anything about MMA, I didn't want to talk about it, I didn't want to think about it. And Mexico kind of gave me that opportunity, to get away from it all. And by the time I got back, I realized that I loved the sport and that I missed it, and that now, like, I want to be involved on any kind of level I can, corner guys, manage guys, promote shows, you name it, nutrition, I'm really into that now, training guys, all that, so I want to do it all, be a coach. I actually signed up for some classes, a coaching class at the Sac City College, and I'm training with the team out there. I go down to Lodi and train with Nate Diaz. I just seen Nick Diaz on Saturday, and I say, hey, man, come in and train with me, trying to do anything I can to, encourage other people to, make an improvement in their life and their health. And, like anybody out there that's depressed or overweight or having trouble like that, I've been where you're at, and I'm here to help you. And God loves you. I don't know what else to say.
Right. Well, on a positive note, your UFC run wasn't all bad. There was a bright spot in your UFC run. It was a victory over Simeon Thornton at UFC on Fox 6, January 26th of 2013. You defeated him by unanimous decision. Were you pleased with your performance in that fight?
Yeah, I there was definitely the opportunity in there to like sink in a choke or to finish him with punches, and it was one of those moments that it kind of is indicative of my whole UFC career, where I was just in the spotlight, like I'm about to win a UFC fight, I'm about to finish a guy, and like I kind of froze right there and didn't sink the choke in right away, and next thing you know, he got out and the fight continued on, and I think I could tell that wasn't the best Simeon Thorson that you're ever going to see. I think he was a little under the weather from that travel from Norway, and it was very satisfying to win that fight, but after the fight I went right back to my food addictions and my depression, and I guess it just goes to show that nothing on the outside can change what's going on inside of you. So I won a UFC fight, woohoo! I did accomplish that goal, and that one's behind me, which is the kind of what I was saying at that press conference. Like, if I'm not in it to win the UFC title, then I might as well just hang up the gloves right now, because I got a lot of other talents. I could do a lot of other things. So I'm in it to get not just a UFC win. I've already done that. Not to fight in the UFC. I fought an hour and 8 minutes in the octagon. I'm in it to like go all the way, and win. If I accomplish that or not is not the point. I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best to make that dream a reality.
Definitely. Now, earlier you mentioned Bulletproof Coffee. You mentioned that you use that. Just curious, is that your new nickname, Bulletproof? Because on the West Coast website, they have that listed as your nickname. Is that the new nickname?
Yeah, for right now, I kind of like working with Brandon, and he sends me a thing, and it says David Dowdy Mitchell, and Dowdy is my Swahili name. My parents named after an African guy, and I got the respect on that last UFC weigh-in where they talked about that, and I was like, cool, but in English it sounds too much like doubt, and there's no more doubt for me. I'm no limit. I'm fucking Super Dave. I'm bulletproof. And those guys really stepped up and hooked me up with a bunch of products and advice, and getting me on this kind of fat burning program where I trained the other day 3 times on just a couple cups of coffee with grass-fed butter and MCT oil in it. This brain octane stuff where, before I'd be starving, hungry, like I just burn fat now and like change my metabolism over and to more of a, not a low carb, but a lower carbohydrate, slower burning starches, kind of almost ketosis sometimes kind of state where mental clarity is so much better. Your feeling of energy and clarity is just awesome. And so I just threw that out there for this fight. I mean, really, that nickname now that is for sale. Really, I'm like one of those ballparks. You give me some money and
right,
whatever your brand, I'm your name. That's it.
Right. Sounds good. I like it. Dave, real quick before I let you go, do you have any sponsors you'd like to thank, and is there anything you'd like to say to the fans?
Oh, man, I got so many. GFY gear really came through with some awesome, these guys are making, like, super good tie pads. Their tie pads today, their gloves, their headgear, all that stuff. They hooked me up from head to toe. Really stoked on them. Nanotech Entertainment, that's my title sponsor. Those guys are awesome. They got a jiu-jitsu school out in Napa, and they're making these boxes and stuff. It's like the future of TV. It's really cool. I'm basically only taking sponsors at this point from companies that I believe in, that I think they're making great products. Yakuza Moon, they're making great clothing and bags and stuff. And GF, it's the guy's his brand's Game Face, but to me it says GF just means gluten-free. I'm like anti-GMOs, anti-gluten, anti-Taco Bell. There's no amount of money that those people could give me to put that garbage on my shorts. And so you'll see on the banner all the particulars, everybody that, my boy Evan Engber with Bioengineering Associates just straight wrote me a check, $500, like months before the fight, helped me pay my rent. Other people doing the same thing, and also all the people who've just been sending me the small checks, helping me out, making my dream a reality. So I thank every one of you, all my people up in Mendocino County, over at Sonoma County. I haven't forgot about you, NorCal Fighting Alliance, and my team out here, Alpha Male, and just the city of Sacramento has just been so good to me. Come check it out. It's a beautiful place to live and work. Mm-hmm.
David, thank you for taking the time to talk. I really appreciate it. Good luck February 15th at WFC 8 against Fernando Gonzalez.
All right, cool, man. Thank you. I hope everyone comes out and watches that fight. It's going to be a good one.